This is Distant Replay, the podcast that goes back in time to relive all the greatest events that we witnessed in sports. From upsets, to championships, to cultural moments, we discuss it all. Coming up on today's episode.
Ward and Holmes are both lined up to the right side. Miller slot left. Washington outside left. Roethlisberger. Pass time. Goes to the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown. Why, Holmes? Incredible.
Going back to February 1st, 2009 for Super Bowl 43. The NFL Network called this one of the top 10 games ever, and number one Super Bowl of all time. Like, I don't know when those rankings came out, but I don't know if you'd adjust them since. Do you consider this to be the greatest Super Bowl ever?
I don't consider it to be the best Super Bowl ever, but what I will tell you, Ben, is we did a poll on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I asked, what's the most underrated Super Bowl of all time?
Okay.
And this was neck and neck with the Rams-Titans Super Bowl that we already did an episode on. This Super Bowl got edged out by that one. So I think the consensus is this is an underrated Super Bowl and possibly one of the most underrated of all time. That's
interesting. The poll results were that way, considering that NFL Network had it ranked number one at some point. And I get it. I mean, I think since the further we get away from the Super Bowl, I think the less we think about it. But going back and watching this game, as we did, you really appreciate just how good it was and how even these two teams were matched. So we're going to go through that tonight on Distant Replay. We will put the game up on our website if you want to go back and watch it in its entirety. It'll be there for you. Again, this game played in Tampa, Raymond James Stadium, classic between the Steelers and the Cardinals. We'll go through it all tonight on the show. You can find us on YouTube, on whatever podcasting app you choose to listen on. You'll find us there, on Twitter, on Instagram as well. So, Mike, I guess, the first thing is we kind of just picked this game. We're kind of in the middle of the summer recording this. Not a lot like timely stuff we wanted to do. So this one's kind of been on our list to go back to because it was such a big game. And I know that you think back about that catch, that Santonio Holmes catch, whether or not you think this is the best game ever, that's got to be one of the top three plays in the Super Bowl ever, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. Not only a touchdown catch to win it in the final minute, but the nature of the catch, the threading the needle of Ben, for sure. It's one of the top plays in Super Bowl history. I don't think there's any denying that. And this game unique in the fact, Ben, that there was 3 classic Super Bowl plays within this game.
Yeah, very true. We're going to go through them tonight. And one thing I had forgotten about, Mike, is that this was Mike Tomlin's second year. I guess I just wasn't really thinking about the whole timeline, but I'd forgotten how quickly he got this team back. And no, let's just make no mistake. It wasn't like the Steelers were struggling when he took over, okay? Cowher just won a Super Bowl, so they were doing fine. But I just forgotten how he got to the pinnacle so quickly.
Yeah, so we're talking here. This is Mike Tomlin in 2008. He's 36 years old at this time, okay?
Yep.
Had played against one of his players, James Farrier, when he was in college, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Kurt Warner, I believe, is older than him when this game is played.
Yeah.
So Mike Tomlin, very young. If you remember back, Ben, so as you said, this is Tomlin's second year as head coach. It was a very big surprise when he got hired. I mean, he was on people's radar. I believe he was an assistant with the Vikings at this time before he became head coach of the Steelers. And it was a surprise out of nowhere, it seemed, that he got the Steelers head coaching job. And remember, 2 of the other strong candidates for the Steelers head coaching position are on the other sideline during this game for the Cardinals. Ken Wisenhunt, the head coach of the Cardinals, was an offensive assistant for the Steelers, and so was Russ Grimm, who was the offensive line coach for the Cardinals at this time. Both of them passed up by the Rooneys in favor of Mike Tomlin. So that was a storyline heading into this game as well.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. But I know that was the case. But yeah, it's not something I think about this game. But, not only did you have good head coaches, there were some good assistant coaches in this game as well. I mean, particularly Bruce Arians, now who has the Super Bowl himself, was the offensive coordinator, and he did a very good job in this game.
Bruce Arians, Dick LeBeau.
Yep.
We're right in the middle of like that Steelers run in the mid-late 2000s, where they're just solid, it seemed like, at every position, right? Ben came to a team that was pretty solid everywhere. It was just a matter of how quick was he going to mature when he came into the league in 2004 and be able to take these Steelers teams to the next level. And as you mentioned, this is his second Super Bowl since coming into the league in 2004. So this team is kind of Ben is not the passer at this point that he is a little bit later in his career, but as far as an entire team, this is like prime Steelers mid late 2000s vintage kind of team here.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, Mike, they've kind of been living on this period for a long time now, right? I mean, when you look at where they've been since, I mean, you kind of think about these teams, and I think that's why kind of Tomlin, while he's not on the hot seat necessarily, I mean, there's talk of him maybe leaving the Steelers at some point. At least that kind of comes up from time to time because they were really good in this era. They've kind of skated on that. They've had some good seasons, but they've never been really as good as they were at this time period.
And you know what? They've never really played like they were built during this era. You know, running the ball.
Yeah.
Willie Parker's the main running back for them at this point. Playing stout defense. You know, they've won other ways, you know, most notably with Ben Roethlisberger throwing the football. But when you think of Steelers football, you think more of a team like this one. You know, big linebackers, solid offensive line, you know, Troy Polamalu flying all around, Roethlisberger with timely passes. You know, this is what you think of.
Well, on the other side, you mentioned Wisenhunt. Then you had Todd Haley, your boy Todd Haley, offensive coordinator. Even my boy Freddie Kitchens was a tight ends coach. And
Todd Haley, of course, would then go become offensive coordinator of the Steelers and have a very controversial era in that job as well. So that's another connection. Good call.
Yeah, a lot of connections here. Obviously, Arians went on to coach for the Cardinals as the head coach. So there's plenty of connections between these two teams. So this season, 2008 season, a couple of notes on this one. First of all, and I think it's kind of interesting just because of the way this game was played, the force out rule on catches was eliminated right at the start of the season. So this was the first year that players had to come down with 2 feet in bounds, even if a defensive player forced them out, and which is kind of interesting the way this season finished, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't realize that the rule changed this year. I thought that had been a rule for a long time. Look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
Research, man. Research tip number 1 right there.
That's why it's great going back to these because you forget about what exactly is happening. You know these big moments, but you forget about all the little things happening around it. So that was the start of the season. Now, the standings for this year, okay, the best team in the AFC were my Titans, and I'd forgotten they were the 1 seed this season, 13-3. The Steelers did win the AFC North. They were 12-4. On the NFC side, the Cardinals won their division. Mike, do you remember this Cardinals team was 9-7? No one else in their division had a winning record.
I remember they were 9-7. I guess I should have figured no one else in the team had a winning record. Is this the year, Ben? You said the Titans were the 1 seed. Was that the Kerry Collins year when he was the quarterback?
I'm pulling it up right now. I think it was.
Okay.
Great memory.
Another smoke and mirrors team that you knew wasn't any good. No offense.
That quarterback room: Kerry Collins, Chris Sims, and Vince Young. They were the 1 seed.
Can you get 3? Usually you try to have quarterbacks that can fit the same style so you don't have to change styles. Yeah, can you get 3 more random quarterbacks than those 3?
Well, no surprise that the Titans were eliminated fairly early in the playoffs. This is a team that did struggle down the stretch. They did beat the Steelers, though, second to last week, 31-14. But when they got into the playoffs, again, they had to run up against that very difficult Ravens team that always gave them trouble. Bit of a rivalry there in the 2000s for sure.
Yeah, the Titans-Ravens rivalry. I'm sure everyone was really hooked to that, Ben.
Bro, you don't remember that rivalry? With Eddie George.
It's one of those rivalries.
And Ray Lewis. It had its moment in time. It was 6 or 8 years, and they were in the same division too for a little bit. So it did have its moment, Mike. Okay, I know you laughed.
Yeah, I don't think Ravens Steelers. I think Ravens Titans during that time period.
During that time period, I mean, the Titans were up there same way. But that we don't have to go down that road and argue that all night. But in the playoffs, though, that was the case for the Titans. They got knocked out early by the Ravens. After that, on the other side, you had Pittsburgh get easily through San Diego. Then they knocked off Baltimore, that rivalry that you think more about in the AFC Championship. Other side, though, you had the Cardinals, who were the 4 seed. They beat Atlanta. Then they beat Carolina, who was the 2 seed, 33-13. Your Giants, who were the 1 seed, Mike, that year, lost to Philadelphia. And then the Cardinals beat the Eagles in the NFC Championship to set up this matchup. Do you remember anything about those playoffs?
Oh, of course, yeah. So that was the year with the Plaxico Burress gun incident.
Was that the gun year?
Yeah, because the Giants are coming off the Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
They started off, I think, like 10-1. You had the gun incident, and then they lose in the division. The Giants were the 1 seed that year.
Yeah.
And then you had Arizona going to play, upsetting Carolina.
Yep.
Who the 1 and 2 seeds got upset that year. Is basically my long and short point there.
Yeah.
And then you had Philly and Arizona unexpectedly in the NFC Championship. Arizona actually getting a home NFC Championship, which as a Jets fan, that kind of stuff just makes me mad because you get that fan base getting a home conference championship game. And then, you have Pittsburgh, who I don't think was a huge surprise getting there against the upstart Arizona Cardinals, who, let's face it, I mean, a lot of guys either enhanced or made their reputations as NFL players or coaches based on this run by the Cardinals. I think that's a very interesting aspect to this.
Yeah, that's a good point. They were 9-7 and hosted a NFC Championship game. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So this Cardinals team, let's go through the roster a little bit because you might not remember them because it's kind of like not a one-off team. I mean, they had the core players, but Kurt Warner being the quarterback. Was this his last season, Mike? Because it's he's much later in his career. He already had the run with the Rams in the 90s and into the 2000s, but he came together battling Matt Leinart this season for that starting job. But that guy there's something about him, man. He's a big time player, and he got him to this level and had him in a position. But he was kind of that head guy along with those great receivers. Yeah,
Warner in his late 30s at this point. Kind of reminded you a lot of how he burst on the scene with the Rams. He stepped into an offense that had Edgerrin James at running back, but more notably 3,000-yard receivers in Anquan Boldin, Larry Fitzgerald, and Steve Breston. And Warner just did a great job guiding that powerful offense. He became a Hall of Famer, in my opinion, because of this season.
Okay.
I think because remember, he was with the Rams. They get rid of him in favor of Mark Bolger. Then Warner ends up on the Giants when they draft Eli Manning. He holds the seat warm for Eli Manning till Eli's ready. Then now he ends up in Arizona thinking that he's going to play the same role for Matt Leinart. Wins the job. We don't know yet that Matt Leinart is going to be that great of a professional quarterback. And then, as they say, the rest is history. He takes full advantage of his opportunity. And even though they only went 9-7, he was great in the playoff run. Larry Fitzgerald is obviously great, right? But I think this playoff run by Larry Fitzgerald cemented him because his teams haven't had much success since. Huge playoff run for him. And like we mentioned before, huge playoff run for Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator, and huge playoff run for Clancy Prendergast, the defensive coordinator. For a minute, everyone thought he was going to be a hot name. Never materialized.
Yeah, what's he doing now?
Who knows? Great name, though.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten Edgerrin James on this team.
Yeah.
Edgerrin James was such a big-time player when he first got out of Miami. Like, when he came through with the Colts, dude, he was like the biggest name, just a superstar, on the verge of being just an epic superstar. He had a good career, but I'd forgotten that he finished up here with the Cardinals. I mean, I remember once I watched this, but I'd forgotten that.
Remember, you had Warner, when he was with the Rams, benefit from the trade of Marshall Faulk to the Rams. Indianapolis at that point obviously gets their hands on Edgerrin James to replace Marshall Faulk, and then everything comes full circle with Edgerrin James joining Kurt Warner.
They also had Tim Howard in that backfield as a rookie who would eventually become a pretty good player for him. But those receivers and the defense was pretty good too. They had a really good linebacker.
Bolden was a beast, bro.
Yeah.
This is not
really good. Yeah.
Possession receiver Bolden like he was with the Ravens later on. It was, I catch everything. I'm the strongest guy in the field, and I can break away if I need to. Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald were legit, man.
And Steve Breston worked out to be a pretty good three with those two guys.
Yeah, perfect compliment.
Defensively, they were pretty good too. Linebackers, Bertrand Berry, Carlos Dansby. The defensive backs, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who had a pretty good game here, was just a rookie. He had just been drafted out of Tennessee State, but you throw him in there along with Antrell Roll. This whole defense was pretty solid.
Yeah, Dansby being the leader, but you have Calais Campbell, Adrian Wilson, Antrell Roll, names you know. And again, they got hot at the right time, just like the offense did.
On the other side, Steelers, obviously Roethlisberger, in his fifth or sixth year with Pittsburgh. Byron Leftwich was still on that team. Running back wise, I mean, Willie Parker, this running back group, very forgettable, Mike. Moel D. Moore was in that group as well.
Come on, Fast Willie was good, bro.
He was pretty good for a time. I'm sure the Steelers fans are probably like, dude, what are you talking about? But
yeah, I'm pretty sure he was on the Seahawks Super Bowl team too.
Yeah.
So if you're a running back and your nickname is Fast
Willie,
that means you're probably pretty good. He went to North Carolina, I believe.
Look at you. Who knew you were such a Willie Parker fan, bro?
I'm a Willie. You know what it is, Ben? This is the time when you're starting to get really into fantasy football. So all the running, no matter how good the guy was, like if he was a running back, you knew him. Like I know who Mewelde Moore was. Yeah. Like he played for the Vikings and started like 5 games at some point.
Yeah, and you're right. Willie Parker did go to UNC, so a little nugget there that you knew about. Wide receiver-wise, Santonio Holmes, obviously the big name, but you had Hines Ward, who was playing a little bit banged up. Nate Washington, Limas Swede was a rookie this year. That's a pretty solid group, and then you throw in the Heath Miller at tight end, who was always a weapon for Ben.
Yeah, Heath Miller, like a little more agile Heath Miller than you remember because he's early on in his career.
Yeah.
Ward and Holmes, obviously, we'll bring up a million times how Hines Ward is a good blocker. That's all you have to hear about the entire game. I never understood why that really mattered that much when he was a receiver. I get it's important, but who cares? Santonio Holmes, look, he was enigmatic. He was a problem child at some points, but he was a very good receiver. I saw this up and close with the Jets a couple years later where he was a major, major difference maker and showed it in this game. The defense, obviously, Palomalu, James Harrison, the big linebackers, Farrier, Larry Foote, Ryan Clark in the backfield with Ike Taylor. You know this defense because these guys were here for so long. Brett Kiesel, this is Pat Muldowney avenue here.
Yeah, I think Muldowney and Steve Braban were at the game.
Were they really?
They went down
Figures.
for it, yeah.
Very, 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 very on brand.
Yeah, that defensive backfield. You look through those names, man, just so good. And can't leave out my boys Fernando Bryant, Deshae Townsend, Mike, 2 Alabama guys that were a big part of that success, right? So yeah, that's the lineup for this team. So very good rosters on both sides of the field. Anything else, Mike, before we get into this game?
Nah, man, let's do it.
So this game took place, as I mentioned, February 1st, 2009, Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. This is NBC's coverage. They had Al Michaels and John Madden, which, again, one other thing I'd forgotten is that John Madden was on this call. But it was such a great surprise when I heard his voice. Yeah,
you want the thrill of your life? Listen to a John Madden announced game on 1.5 speed on YouTube. No,
that's what we did.
We told you last week. Sometimes we listen to the games on advanced speed to make them go faster.
Yeah.
And when he's going on one of his rants where he's all excited, it's hilarious at 1.5 speed. But yeah, Madden and Michaels classic. It was awesome when they kind of joined forces here during this time period.
Yeah.
Because you always thought of them separately as hey, Michaels is the best play-by-play, Madden's the best analyst, and when NBC got the rights to the Sunday Night Football in America or whatever it's called, this was a natural pairing. Yeah, because,
I just remember him more, at ABC around that time, but I'd forgotten those two worked together for a little bit. But it was a great surprise coming in there. Now, another thing to remember, just a little side note, it's fun kind of finding these little nuggets about these games, but remember, the 2009, so this is 2008 season, this is right at the time of the recession, right? Huge economic issues across the country. I didn't remember this was called this, but this game was dubbed the Recession Bowl, Mike. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know.
Restaurants,
that's like another thing, like the Ravens-Titans rivalry. Maybe some people called it that.
Parties like the Playboy Party and the Sports Illustrated Party were canceled. There were about 200 fewer journalists that covered the game than normal. Ticket values dropped about 40% that year from the year prior. This year also, Ford, Chrysler, GM did not even purchase a TV ad because they were struggling so much.
This is right up my alley.
Yeah.
Because it mixes like a little bit of true crime, depending on how you look at that global financial crisis. Mm-hmm. It integrates the 2008 financial crisis, which I've read every book and watched every movie on, and football. So I could listen to these stats all night. Go ahead.
But yeah, that's all I have. But just kind of give you a sense of, I don't think about that at all when I think about this game, but just give you a little context of what's going on. This was NBC's first Super Bowl since 1997. Was available in 1080i high definition, Mike, not
there you
PI. Yeah, so that's the setup for this game, and let's jump into it and talk about what we actually saw on the field because it was a fun game to watch and go back to. But one last note: national anthem, Jennifer Hudson. Coin toss, General David Petraeus.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Forgot about that. They also had
Petraeus.
some former legends like John Elway and a couple other guys that came out on the field too. But officially, Petraeus was listed as the coin toss guy. All right, first quarter. So I thought Arizona had I thought Pittsburgh had a great game plan right out of the gates. Arians, I mean, this Pittsburgh team came out just picking apart this Arizona defense. But it was this is a really weird game because you could make an argument that either team probably should have lost this game. Like the Steelers looked really good in the first quarter, but the defense of the Cardinals kept them in it by stopping them on that first drive at the 1 inch line, 1 foot line after a review and Roethlisberger's trying to go in. Held them to a field goal there to 3-0, which also thought, did you think at all, like, is that a spot where you got to go for it, or are you fine taking the points? Forget about what we know now, but in that moment, are you saying you got to go for that there on the first drive, make a point?
No, I think you kick a field goal and get the points.
Even with you big lumbering Ben Roethlisberger and that heavy offense they had.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. That's why.
You got to go by the book, Ben. There's a book for a reason, buddy.
You love.
But, hey, Ben, look, the other Ben, I think an important part of this first quarter was Roethlisberger was awful in that Super Bowl against the Seahawks.
Yeah, they made a point of
really
mentioning
bad
that too.
And yeah, so like a 23 quarterback rating bad. So I think it was super important for his confidence. He came out 8 of 9 for 122 yards in the first quarter. So again, they're only up 3-0 at the end of the first quarter. Rodgers Cromartie, as you mentioned, made a great play to break up a long pass that would have been a touchdown on another Steelers drive. But those are the highlights of the first quarter. Roethlisberger getting off to a good start. The Cardinals defense bending but not breaking. 3-0 at the end of 1.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a great quarter for the Steelers, even though the scoreboard might not be too indicative. But they're getting the ball back, ready to go again after stopping the Cardinals. And you see vintage Roethlisberger in this game too, especially in the second drive. He has one of those scrambles where he's running around all over the field and is able to. I don't know how he knows the receivers across the field open, but in just a flash of a second can turn around, plant his feet, find his receiver, and then hit him 30 yards across the field for a first down. I mean, we see Roethlisberger try to do these things now, but when you watch him back then, he was a pretty incredible player to watch. Yeah,
this is at the time period, like from this point on, he became like just a great passer. Like I think from this year on, this is when he started to separate himself from Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
And this is when he's like in that next tier right behind Manning and Brady.
145 yards of offense in those first 2 pit drives, just up and down the field, and they capped off by a touchdown, 10-0 quickly. But Kurt Warner and that Arizona offense, they picked it up, and I think from this point forward, I mean, a slow start, but they looked really good just about the rest of the way. And I thought what was weird is on that one touchdown, their first touchdown, they had Warner stumbles out of the pocket, out of the snap, and then throws a perfectly weighted pass over the defender for a touchdown, which it looked like it could either been a mistake on the snap and it could have been a sack, or it could have been an interception either way. But it was weird that they actually pointed out in the broadcast that this happened like all the time that season, where his center was stepping on his feet.
You were and they were ready with that whole little package they did. Dude, they were
crazy.
so ready. They were like, you could tell, like when he stumbled, they were like, yes. Like
how often do you have that be such a common theme to where they build a package and have it ready to go for early second quarter of the game? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From all of them during the season.
But they showed all the different examples of it. It definitely was an issue.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, he throws a perfect pass to Ben Patrick for a lot of Bens in this game and on this podcast right now.
Love it.
10-7 Steelers now. And Steve Breston very involved early. He has a good punt return to put Arizona in good field position with 4 minutes left in the half, and they couldn't capitalize. And then after that they can't capitalize with 4 minutes left in good field position, Roethlisberger throws an INT with 2 minutes left, and the Cardinals have the ball at the Steelers' 34 going in. And this is where, during this drive, is when we get our first of the 3 classic plays I was talking about before. I'm
going to admit something here on the podcast, Mike. I had forgotten all about this James Harrison play. Like, I was watching this game thinking, okay, does Arizona score here? So they go to halftime with the lead and then lose it, and then boom, that happens, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, what I had forgot, Ben, is how big of a swing it was. The Cardinals had the ball twice in positions to score here leading into the half. They go from that to this Harrison 100-yard interception return for a touchdown that we've all seen a million times, seen the highlights. Very underrated is the hustle by Larry Fitzgerald to get down the field and almost keep him from getting in the end zone. And remember, we were right at the end of the half. So if he falls short of the end zone, the Steelers get nothing. But the Cardinals have the ball in good field position twice and come up -7.
Yep.
So
Crazy.
it's now it's 17-7 at halftime, and this is James Harrison coming off of being Defensive Player of the Year. You know, this is James Harrison, take no prisoners. He's so tough. You know what I mean? That's what we're dealing with him. And you know, he follows it up with a great play. Let's face it.
It's a huge play. I mean, it was the play of the game. You can look at it from many different angles, and it determined the outcome of this game, because not only does he take it back for a touchdown, which is still one of the greatest returns of all time. I mean, such an unlikely and an improbable 100-yard return there to get all the way down the field and score there. But the fact that the Cardinals had the ball to start the second half too. I mean, this was going to be, if they score a touchdown, you're talking about them going up 14-10 with the ball and all the momentum in this game. And the way the Cardinals were moving it, like, they could easily come out after that and scored a touchdown and made it 21-10. It could have definitely been that early in that third quarter. But instead, it wasn't. They got the ball back, and then, you know, they didn't do a whole lot in the third quarter. But that to me was, and I'm ashamed that I'd forgotten that play, like, that it happened in that moment. Obviously, I remember how big it was once it happened. I was like, oh yes, but man, that play is still got to be one. Like, I don't know if that play or the play at the end of the game was a better play. Like, to me, I think that this play's better. Obviously, the other one wins it in the back of the end of the touchdown, but to me, this was an infinitely better play, and it was a great defensive play call. They showed how Harrison faked the rush, dropped back, and then stepped in front of that play. Yeah,
That's like one of the most unique plays in Super Bowl history, because you just never see it. Even if you see an interception return for a touchdown, it's never by a linebacker.
No, dude, that whole, it's just ridiculous. All right, halftime, Mike, do you remember who the halftime show was?
No.
Bruce Springsteen, E Street Band.
Man. There you go. If there's anything that's going to bring a country out of the doldrums of a recession, it's going to be Bruce and Stevie Van Zandt. Are we at the height of Sopranos here during this?
2009. That's right around the end of The Sopranos, right?
There you go.
Had to be that year.
And there you go. I purposely don't look up the halftime show because I want to be surprised.
That was a pretty good one, right? I think a lot of people.
If you don't like Bruce live, I don't know what you're even doing.
I think he's overrated, but that's just me personally.
He's known for Ben. That's going to be very controversial based on who listens to this podcast, buddy.
Yeah, well, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear if anybody agrees. I know there are people out there. They just don't want to say it.
Ben's here. Ben's here. He ain't going nowhere.
They don't want to say it. So halftime. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you have halftime, this end of the second quarter, action-packed. Bruce, action-packed. Good thing, because this third quarter was low-key awful.
Yeah, which is crazy, because it's like, you can't have 4 quarters of a great game. And I think the game has been pretty good so far. First quarter, 3-0, but I think there was a lot of some good plays in that first quarter. This third quarter, yes, not great. All he had is a field goal, 20-7 going into the fourth quarter. And again, it feels like, Arizona's doing some things, but the Steelers are still in control of this in the fourth quarter. But that's when it becomes Larry Fitzgerald's game. And I don't even know that I really knew this, but I love that they pointed out Larry Fitzgerald's dad, who wrote a column. So he's kind of covering
Minnesota. He's from Minnesota. Okay. I think it's somewhere in Minnesota, yeah.
So he's covering the game, right? And they're talking about, hey, he wants to write a story, and how remarkable would this be to have it be your son winning the Super Bowl. And then right after that, like, that was before he even broke out. He'd had like one catch, right, going into the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden he breaks out. And I was thinking, man, what a story that would have been for his dad had that played out, because this was, I think you pointed out, this is Larry Fitzgerald's coming out party in terms of really cementing his legacy with this quarter.
Yeah, this playoff run by Larry Fitzgerald, and specifically this fourth quarter, is going to be what they show when he's inducted in Canton, is going to be the main part of his highlight reel, right? I think when we think of Larry Fitzgerald, we think of fade touchdowns. I know that's what I think of. Remember how great he was with that when he was at Pittsburgh? And then he was great. And then this first drive of the fourth quarter, you have a quick touchdown drive by the Cardinals going no huddle, capped off by a fade to Fitzgerald in the end zone. Warner now 8 for 8 on this drive for 87 yards. Fitzgerald with his 6th postseason touchdown, tying Jerry Rice's record.
Yeah, you forget about how how good he was in that playoff. But
Yeah,
that
great.
touchdown came at 7:40 left, so it's still kind of deeper in this game. 2014 rather. But then they had the big safety, a play that, again, was another thing that I didn't really remember. But a huge turning point because there's just over 3 minutes in this game. They're backed up on the 1 yard line, and Roethlisberger makes a great play and a great catch by Santonio Holmes. It looked like it was going for a first down and what essentially would have begun the process of icing this game. But that safety in the end zone, did you remember that play?
I didn't remember that play. And Ben, more overarching, what I did not remember was how big of a role penalties played in this game.
Yeah.
There was a lot of drives. The Cardinals had a defensive drive in the third quarter where they had 3 personal fouls.
Crazy.
So yeah, and penalties as a whole were a huge part of this game, and this one obviously being the biggest one.
Second play after that. This is the second of 3 iconic plays that you pointed out, right?
Yes. So this is Larry Fitzgerald, Kurt Warner to Larry Fitzgerald with 2:37 left. This is the classic slant pattern he catches, and he's off to the races. It's the one where he's looking at himself in the Jumbotron to see what's behind him. We've seen this, again, if there's one highlight you see of Larry Fitzgerald in his career, this is it. Him breaking away from the defense. And this is the first time I remember very, very vividly watching this game. And when you're a fan of a bad team, Ben, like I am with the Jets, on your radar is, I hope no other bad team ever gets to have a good moment before I do. And immediately what I thought was, the Cardinals are going to win the freaking Super Bowl. You got to be kidding me right now. That's what you thought in the moment. It was such a huge play.
Yeah, and they came back 16 unanswered points in the matter of five plus minutes. And now there's 2.5 minutes left, and they got to get one stop essentially to end this game.
The Cardinals.
The Cardinals.
I mean, we don't have to tell people who listen to this podcast you will follow football. Not a great franchise history.
Well, they get back to Roethlisberger, and this is kind of the drive that maybe will define his career when it's all said and done, too. And the one thing about this drive, a couple big plays. I mean, Holmes made all the big plays on this drive. I mean, he had a huge play a couple before that touchdown catch. And, again, this is, by the way, a quick reminder, the Cardinals are on the verge of the largest comeback in Super Bowl history. That's where we are right now.
Yep.
That's how big of a deal this is.
And Ben, remember, again, you have to put it in context. Roethlisberger had an awful first Super Bowl, and before this drive that we're talking about right now, he has 186 yards and an interception. That's it.
Yeah.
And Warner has 344 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Great point.
So where this is a huge, it cannot be overstated how big of a drive this is for his legacy.
That is a great point. Context on this drive is so important, and I think you nailed it with that. And he delivered, but Holmes had a big play to get him down to the 10, a good catch and run. And then they ran the exact same play back-to-back, which was crazy. They ran Holmes the left corner, left side of the end zone, the back corner, just overthrown open. Could have been a touchdown. So Roethlisberger missed that throw. And then came back to the right side, exact same play, and hit him in the corner with Holmes with that incredible catch. You see his 2 feet down. And it is more remarkable watching now because I remember that catch, but you just see like when you take a freeze frame of him in the corner and what's in the screen of the picture, all you see is just empty turf and 3 Cardinals players within like 5 yards of him, and you see where he catches that ball. I still don't know how that ball gets in there.
I know. It was a great throw and maybe an even better, equally good throw and catch.
Yeah.
Look, Holmes, if he wasn't such like didn't have such an attitude problem, remember a couple years later, the Steelers don't even want to deal with him anymore. He's off the team.
Yeah.
I mean, the tendency with Holmes, I think, is to equally, if you followed his career, not that his attitude problems overshadowed this catch, but I think had his career turned out a little bit better, it would be highlighted even more.
Yeah.
And it's already highlighted a lot, He was like, I can't explain it. I watched him, I mentioned before, I watched him week in and week out with the Jets when he was on the Jets. He was like really, really good when he was into it.
What if it was Hines Ward that made that catch?
I don't know. I like Hines Ward, but this is where I differ from like a lot of football fans in this respect. Like, give me like 2 Santonio Holmes, and I hope one of them works out. You know what I mean? Then a Hines Ward. I like Hines Ward a lot, but I think when they were both in their primes, like I think the proof is in the pudding. I think Holmes was a lot better receiver, but Ward was a better teammate, and of course was an awesome receiver. But I just think Holmes was a little bit of a notch better during this time period.
Yeah. Well, a sack fumble would end it. for the Cardinals, as they had one last chance but didn't really make much of it, and that was it. But the final in this game, 27-23. But Cardinals had 407 total yards to 292 for Pittsburgh, 2 turnovers to 1. Arizona had more turnovers, had more first downs. They didn't have as much time possession, but everywhere you looked, I mean, Kurt Warner, 31 completions, 377, 3 touchdowns. Roethlisberger did finish with 256 and a touchdown, but pretty much, a third of that, quarter of that, all in that last drive?
Yeah, yep. 186 to start the drive, a little over 250 to end it.
Yeah.
So, just one of those, and this got Tomlin. This is should Mike Tomlin be the head coach of the Steelers? It's his second year. This, is the seat too big for him in his first head coaching job? This gets that monkey off his back. This elevates Arians now, because now Arians is the offensive coordinator of a Super Bowl winner.
Yep.
And we all know what he parlayed that into later in his career. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, this playoff run and this Super Bowl was big for a lot of people's legacies, as is every playoff run in the Super Bowl. But I think this game had a little more of that element to it. Yeah,
it did. And the Steelers will go back to Super Bowl 2 years later, lose to the Packers. The Cardinals, since that time, been a little different story, as Mike mentioned. Pointed out, they're not the greatest franchise, but they've been back to the playoffs 3 times since 2008. They've had a couple of decent teams. Bruce Arians, most notably, was the other coach to lead them there. They're still trying to do that with Kyler Murray.
I'm thinking off the top of my head here. You just mentioned, obviously, how we all know Rodgers and Roethlisberger squared off in the Super Bowl in 2010. If my brain is correct here, I'm pretty sure that's the last time either of them were in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, just pulled it up. Rodgers has definitely been on the verge a number of times. He's only missed the playoffs twice since that time. But, yeah, it's the last time they both been in the Super Bowl. That's
wild,
pretty crazy.
Man.
That is crazy.
Both probably consensus top 5 quarterbacks in that time, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, more than a decade for either one of them.
And since 2010, they didn't get to a Super Bowl. Very interesting.
And there's a great chance neither of them do, right?
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah, unless I would say probably more likely Rodgers to get to one than Roethlisberger, but who knows?
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Now that you think about that. Great little nugget there to end it with. I got one other note on this game of interest. We talk about outdated. There's not a ton of outdated in this game because it's not that long ago. HD was going on. Everything was pretty normal in terms of that. But the Steelers' 2008 season, Super Bowl 43 championship home video went on sale on DVD. 1 week later, March 3rd, it was released on Blu-ray, Mike, making it the first NFL Films home video release to be on Blu-ray.
Blu-ray, man. Remember Blu-ray?
I do.
Bro, can I play a Blu-ray on DVD or a DVD on Blu-ray? Remember how confusing that was?
Bro, you want to talk about that? Add an HD DVD. Do you even know what that is?
No. Dude, I don't know anything. I just used to get so frustrated. I'm like, you know what? I'm not renting this video, or I'm not buying this video because I don't know if I could play it in my freaking DVD player because it's Blu-ray and all this other stuff. Forget it. I'm not getting it.
HD DVD is what lost out to Blu-ray in the battle for HD supremacy on disc. So
Blu-ray sounds cooler. Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
Hey, one other outdated I got for you. We did not. When you think of the Cardinals franchise, one of the first 5 things you think of is Rod Tidwell.
Yeah.
And he was pictured. He was in the crowd, and they were like, "Oh, Cuba Gooding Jr." And everyone watching is like, "Oh, it's Rod Tidwell."
Yeah, that was the best thing for the Cardinals organization before this game, maybe.
Yeah, they didn't show any classic Cardinals players because there are none. Dan Deerdorf is like the only one.
That's amazing. Yeah, no other outdated. I mean, in terms of how this game could have played out differently, I mean, I just think it's that first half, the way it ended. I mean, that was the game. If the Cardinals scored there, I think they definitely win that game. I think
you're right. The end of that first half was a huge swing.
Remarkable. Can't believe I forgot it, Mike. All right, let's close it out on that note. We will put this game up online at distantreplaypodcast.com. Find it there. Watch it for yourself. Watch it in a 1.5 speed. Listen to John Madden in a fast speed. It's very entertaining. Find us on YouTube as well. Please subscribe, like the video, leave us a comment, spread the word, but also find us on Twitter and Instagram.
Absolutely. Please rate, subscribe, review. Can't do it without you guys. And until next time.